Have you ever changed your mind about what you want to be when you grow up? It's a big question. In a story by Alexander Ruskin, a boy known as Little Daddy was asked this all the time. He always had a confident answer ready, but his answer changed every single day. At first, he was absolutely certain he'd be a night watchman. A dream job is often just a clever way to spend your time doing exactly what you want to do, like finding a way to stay awake long after your actual bedtime. But then, a bright green ice cream cart rolled through town, and his plans shifted. If he were the ice cream man, he figured he could eat a treat for every single one he sold, and even hand out free ice cream to the other kids. Back then, selling ice cream meant having to physically push a heavy cart down the street yourself. To Little Daddy, though, that just looked like a very tasty way of being grown up. His parents found his new plan pretty funny, but their amusement didn't last long, because shortly after, he visited the railway station and discovered a new obsession: the train shunter. A shunter is someone who moves railway cars from one track to another. To a kid, though, it looked like a man getting to crawl under massive cars and jump on platforms, playing a strange and wonderful game all day. When you look at the massive scale of an old steam locomotive emitting thick white smoke, you can see why a child would find this environment far more interesting than anything else. A child's definition of the best job tends to bounce between those two things: the pure indulgence of unlimited sweets and the overwhelming awe of giant, noisy machines. Little Daddy now had a problem. He wanted to be a train shunter, but he absolutely refused to give up the bright green ice cream cart. He came up with a schedule to solve it. He'd sell ice cream in the morning, go to the station to shunt trains midday, and then go back to the cart, which he'd conveniently park right next to the tracks. When the adults laughed at his plan, he got angry. To prove he could do it all, he added Night Watchman to his routine. After all, he argued, he'd have nothing else to do at night. When a child wants two things at once, they don't choose. They simply invent a world where they can be in two places at once, and they're genuinely surprised when the rest of the world points out it's impossible. With that schedule settled, he moved on to a rapid-fire list of new ideas, starting with wanting to fly through the sky as a pilot. Then he wanted to be an actor, captivated by the costumes and the energy of being on a crowded stage. That lasted until his grandpa took him to a factory, which completely reset his goals again. Now he wanted to be a turner. A turner operates a heavy metal lathe, using spinning machinery to shape parts. It was complex and loud, and he wanted to master it. He dropped the factory idea to become a sailor on the open ocean, and shortly after that, he decided he'd rather be a shepherd. He imagined spending his days walking about with the cows and loudly cracking a whip in the fresh air. These ambitions rewrite themselves every time a child is exposed to a brand new environment or a tool they've never seen before. Eventually, he settled on his most unusual idea yet. He decided that he wanted to be a dog. He was dedicated to the role. He spent an entire day running on all fours and aggressively barking at strangers. He even tried to bite an elderly lady when she reached out to pat his head. But eventually, he hit a wall. He sat down next to a real dog named Rover to learn the craft. He tried desperately to scratch behind his ear with his foot. No matter how hard he tried, he just couldn't master that specific movement. Attempting to force yourself to be something you are not usually leads to a lot of physical frustration and some very strange situations. While he was busy practicing his scratching, an officer stopped on the street. He just stood there and watched for a long time. Finally, the officer asked what he was doing. When Daddy explained he was trying to be a dog, the officer asked if he didn't want to be a human being anymore. That quiet question made Daddy feel suddenly ashamed of how he was behaving. He stopped, paused to think about it, and finally gave his ultimate answer: "I want to be a human being." For once, nobody laughed at him. They didn't laugh because it was his most honest answer. Before you successfully become a pilot, a dedicated shepherd, or an ice cream man, the single most important job is being a good human being. And thankfully, a human being doesn't really have to know how to scratch behind their own ear with their foot.